Good morning, good morning. Welcome to my channel. Today I thought we'd muck around with a vintage cover. Now, I've already done some work on this. I've done me signature block, and I'm sorry, but I actually already glued my fabric in the, that's a kettle stitch I used. I will eventually showcase you how I done mine, but there's plenty of tutorials up on kettle stitch and signature blocks, because that's a signature block. I've got about 13 signatures in there. Now when this is finished, I will also have an end page, so that end page would end up being glued to that, to my cover. Plus I painted some fabric. I also made my spine. I'm going to just show you this quickly, what I did. I made my spine. I don't know what I did with it. It's in here somewhere. Anyway, what I did, I used these two, stuck them together and put them in the middle. I scored it. Where did it go? Where did it go? Where did it go? Oh, here it is. So I stuck these two together. Once these were together, then I end up cutting into that to give me a raised edge. You can do as many as you want as these, but I stuck them together, and then once I did that, stuck them all in line, then I stuck it down to my sheet, and it measures to the length of the cover. It's got to measure to the length of the cover. I painted some cloth, which gave me the book cloth. The book cloth will get stuck to it, and that hasn't been done. I just wanted to show you. So I haven't even cut the cloth to size, but once that's all stitched in together, you'll be able to see the raised edges. But because I haven't glued it, you won't be able to see it yet. But we'll do that a bit later on. Why don't we just start the cover? This is a vintage cover. So you basically get your signature block, that piece in there, and you're making your own book cloth out of painted, so it'd be like that. And this is, that is the, so that would be glued to your page. That would be, that's your back. That's your back of your journal. So our back of our journal's done, basically, but I'm just not going to trim that till last. But we're going to make the top, and I'm going to show you how I achieve that vintage look. And at the end of it all, you're going to have one fine looking journal. I don't know if you could see clearly what I was showing you anyway. We'll showcase that again anyway, because I'll explain more about the signature block and whatnot. So you need 2 pages for your end pages. Always remember that. Now, normally when I paint mine, I always make sure I paint quite a bit of the inside so that doesn't show. That's been waxed and whatnot. But I'll show you how I achieve the corners, and I'll show you how we can dress up the centre. The first thing we do is pick what you want. Like you can use that to create what I want, or you could use that, which I'm thinking that's what I want to use, so I'm going to glue that down. And I've got to try and make sure it's centered. This is such a fun project to make. fun journal to make. It's a vintage book, and I'm just going to basically, when I've done this, I'll showcase to you how to put the cover together. But this is just basically a quick rundown on what I did. Now I'm using Fabri-Tac because I know that will hold this down well. Because I'm all about raised items on my journal as a dressing. So I'm going to center that there. So you're basically making your own vintage cover. Then I've got lace. This creates a really good raised effect in your journal, as you've seen by my other cover. I didn't put so now I'm going to make sure that is glued properly and make sure it's moved right up into the corner, because we don't want it not moved. There's painting involved in this. I actually really enjoyed doing this cover. But I got my signature block done first for the simple reason is I needed to know the size of my spine. Now, I do know that it is, I'm thinking now, I've got 13 signatures in there. Because I use the kettle stitch, it creates, you're not going to see it, if you know what I mean, but you're creating a real solid journal, and that's what I liked about doing this project, because I'm creating a solid journal. But I'm making sure, like, my cardstock has been gessoed. I always gesso my covers before I stick anything down to them, because it does prevent warping, and like, I would hate to see something I done warped within no period of time. So warping's what concerned me, and I really basically concentrated on that by giving it a good coat of gesso, and it's my homemade gesso. I got the recipe from Lynn, and I love it. I've been watching tutorials on making vintage covers for a long time, and look, I've done a couple, but I haven't really ventured there because it does require that bit more work, but it's not hard. So any lace will do. You can use that as well for your edge. I just decided not to. I decided to use this lace. I'm going to use that on another book because I haven't got enough for the back side. I've got enough for the front side, but not the back. So it annoyed me. So I just trim off the excess. So just sew it well and let it dry well. Use your heat gun if necessary. Look, honestly, you'll prevent so much warpage. You'll thank me later for telling you. A lot of us feel we don't have to, but I think if you want longevity in your journals, it's wise to gesso. And look, it cost me $2 to make some gesso, multi-medium, and some textured paste. So that's the front of our cover. So now what I'm going to do is, you've seen how I use that. You can use anything too, by the way, on your spine. You can use this stuff, which will raise it more. I just didn't want it to be raised heavily, so I used this stuff, which I quite like. So anyway, without further ado, I made my own multi-medium. Before I started, I made sure I had a real good painted strip of fabric. Like, you need, like, realistically, I should have painted heaps of this stuff, so, because I used it a fair bit. And all I did is use that for my, whoops, didn't know it didn't have the lid in it. Oh, I used that for my base, and then I went over it with a brown to achieve that because I really want it to blend in with my cover. So let's start doing this. So my main multi-medium that I made, again using Lynn's recipe. I don't know if she's done the video yet, but she did say she was going to. Now what I do, I cut a lot of the backings of napkins, and then I just glue them down. And you notice I'm literal with my glue, because I want texture. I want a vintage cover, so I'm gonna literally lay, but I don't put it on top of my lace. I don't do it on top of my framework, because that's not going to show. It's going to be painted anyway. So like I said, I'm pretty literal with it. I don't, because I want the texture, because that's what's going to give it that vintage vibe that we all look for. And this multi-medium is made up of PVA glue. It's a quarter a cup of the glue. Well, one part glue, three quarters of water. Oh, golly gosh. Sorry, guys. I've been sleeping all day, but I'm still tired. But I didn't have the urge to sleep, and I thought, I'll just come in and do a bit more of this cover that I'd started. Because I get very impatient when I start a cover. I'd like to finish it. And this is not a difficult cover to make. Like I said, you can use any raised ornaments you got. You can use the Big Shot, cut little edging. You can do all sorts of things. Now, I'm not going to put a photo in this because this is all for just decoration. I just want a vintage cover. But I certainly am going to line it with as much tissue inside, just so I can get that wrinkly look in there. If you see, I'm just patting it down lightly with my brush because it's pretty damp with that mixed medium that I used. And it needs a little bit more there, so I'll feed it in. But I don't put it inside the crevices because I don't want it there. I'm just creating, like I said, a bit of texture. You can use tissue paper, you can use any paper to create this effect. I think I've given it plenty. And look, I'm really happy with it. And so far, I haven't played with this in years, you know, like a good couple of years was the last time I made a cover like this, and I actually sold that journal. I don't know, it's something to do with, I can't remember what. It was just vintage anyway, just vintage ephemera. Like I said, I use the kettle stitch for the spine. You can find lots of tutorials on that. Like I said, when I'm doing a cover like this, I prefer to do my signature block first before anything else. Because at the end of the day, you want it to sit nicely in your book. And I found the only way anything can sit nicely in your book is if you completed the way I did this. So I'm pretty literal with my glue, and I'm not worried of how the layout's going to be because it'll be fine. I just want to create the textured look, you know, like the Fox faux leather. So this is my vintage book, really. So I'll put a bit more on the edge because I want some raised edging there. and turn it to face you if you're not sure it's correct, and then you'll be able to pat it down or make more indentations. It's up to you. But I just love it. I love this technique. It's simple, easy. Even the painting is easy. But to create that vintage look, you sort of need to paint with a couple of colours as such to give you that, I don't know, different shades in your cover. You can experiment anyway. That's the beauty of this. It's experimenting. It's seeing what works for you. And that's what it is about for me. It's seeing what works for me, and I go from there. And, you know, you can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong. Now, I just make sure that my tissue is not on my wood, because that's not where I want it to be. So like I said, you can use anything. You can use lace for your centre. I actually cut some lace out. I was going to use that and then decided against it. Oops. For some reason, yeah, I thought, nah, I'm not going to use lace. And that's what I used before, was actual lace. But like I said, if you've got a big shot on that, well, you're laughing, because you can cut out different things and lay them. But what I never do is I don't lay my tissue on my lace work, because that's what I'm building up. I'm building up around it. And I want them to show like as if I got framelets or something around my journal. And like I said, this multi-medium that I mixed up, everything I used, my gesso, was all homemade. Because we're about spending money on, you know, we're doing things on limited supplies. And believe you me, it works. These work. I love my textured paste. Lynn is putting up a video soon of that. Well, I'm hoping she will be, but she's a bit busy at the moment. So be patient, ladies, and she'll give you a really good recipe for it. But see, I'm not really overthinking things. I'm just talking away, and I'm just laying wherever I think I need the tissue. I'm just keeping it off my lace. I get close to it because I want some texture around it, but I'm not stressing it out. Like I said, this is not about stressing out. This is about getting a cover together, showcasing how it works. I'm probably working too slow, but that's me at the moment. I just thought I'd show you another way of making a cover, something that you will be happy with, and creating a vintage vibe to your journals. This is fun. Like, it's a fun project. So what I might do, I'll pause that because you don't want to watch me do the rest of it. I'm just going to cover it one more time, and then I will come back. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to paint it. So you see how I've got some nice texture in there. Now, if you're still not happy with that, you can add textured paste. I'm choosing not to. So I'm going to literally cover it up with this gold. I love this, and I've used it that many times, and it really does make for an interesting colour once you add more colour to it. So be literal with it, and it will paint up a tree. Now, I've been itching to get to this cover, and something always comes up, or I can't do it, or whatever it may be. But I'm happy to say that I'm able to show you at least part one. And then I can, don't worry about the bits and pieces that stand up, because we can either sand them back or whatever it may be. But I don't think we'll have to do that. You can water down your paint. I choose not to, because I like the texture of the thickness of this paint. But yeah, just get into the grooves. That's why you need a really soft brush. And these are only a couple of dollars, the ones I'm using here. So they're not expensive. I'm all about doing things on a budget. Like I said, if you do your gesso and all that first before you so I'm real literal with the paint. I don't stress it out, and I do get the edges, even though they'll be covered up. I still do them. See, so no waste. It's all working in, because that's what I want it to do. And the same with here, where the lace is. I am literal with my paint because I want it to seep into those little crevices and whatnot. So don't forget, this is going to be the front of my cover. Okay. So very literal with the paint. And just gave everything a good soak. And I'm going to dry it off. So, okay, I've dried off the gold. Oh, I don't know if it's gold. It's raw sienna. And now I'm going to get a bit of blue paint. And yeah, blue paint. And you're asking me, why would she do that? But that's what creates that rustic, dark effect. And that's why I use the blue. I sort of like, I get it and I shade with it. Just rub it on my brush. I'm just mixing it with a bit of water. And then I'll just shade with it. And don't stress it out because it ain't going to stay there because you're going to add another colour to it. You're just doing a shading effect and it actually looks really cool. But I'm not going to try and get it into the crevices because I want another colour to go in there. But I'm just slapping it on. That's all I'm doing. Because I want that shaded look that you get in the covers. Realistically, I shouldn't have done the other cover first, but I wanted to show you what I was doing. And, of course, that's why I did it. Add a bit more of that dark in there because I just want that shaded look. Okay, I'll pause it till I dry it. Okay, so now we're going to use, I love this brown. It's Americana brand. It's Coffee Bean. And I really love it. I could have mixed it with another colour, but I just prefer the Coffee Bean. I should have actually stirred it up, but I didn't think to do that. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like I said, this is vintage. Ooh. My brush is dirty. And that's all I do. Now I'll mix the brown. And this is what I do. I just then paint it on. Now I might have to give this 2 coats because of the blue, because I think that's what I did with the other one. Because I want them to look the same. I don't want things to look odd. In this colour light, it looks really quite different. But now this is when I make sure all the sides are painted and I take the paint to there. So please, when you do your covers, don't do what I did, have one ready and the other one not, because you won't get the same colours unless you know how to blend in well. which I can do that, I wouldn't recommend it, because you'll end up with something that you don't particularly like, you know, and you want both your covers to look alike. So this will need 2 coats because it's too dark, but it actually needs more paint as well. And because I didn't mix it well, that doesn't make for good painting either. So just mix your paints well, will you? Don't do what I did. There you go. Now it's happening. Now I'm getting the colour I should be getting. But the blue is more like a shader, you know, something that pops out like an aged look. That's why I use it. And I believe many artists do use it. I did see this on YouTube somewhere. And the colour combinations. And I quite liked it. I liked the way they made it look. But it will need 2 coats, I'd say. Like I said, make sure your sides are done. And especially the edges of the inside. Because you don't want them to be showing through. And that will dry quick because of the gesso. And a bit of the raw sienna will come through, a bit of the blue will come through, all to give you that raw look, you know, and I love it. See how much it's changing already? Okay, we'll pause it again